The dusty discovery. The rain battered the attic window, each gust a tiny percussive assault against the aged glass. Eli hugged himself, the thin knit of his sweater offering scant comfort. Boredom, amplified by the relentless drumming overhead, had driven him to this refuge. Usually a neglected repository of cast-off furniture and faded aspirations, the attic possessed a strange allure on days like this. Drifting particles shimmered in the solitary beam that knifed through a gap in the sealed window, casting an otherworldly glow upon forgotten relics. He picked his way through the shadowy labyrinth, his sneakers disturbing the quiet dust. A one-eyed rocking horse, a mute witness to vanished childhoods, stood sentinel. A stack of time-worn newspapers leaned precariously, their headlines murmuring tales of bygone conflicts and scandals. But Eli wasn't after playthings or yesterday's news, he sought adventure, a narrative to chase away the gloom. He spied it tucked in a remote corner, beneath a time-worn tapestry depicting a hunt. A book. Not just any book, but one radiating a silent, captivating aura. It was hefty, its dark leather binding cracked and weathered. The gilt lettering on the spine was almost obliterated, but the ghost of a cross remained. He reached for it, his fingers caressing the aged hide. A patina of fine dust clung to the cover, leaving a faint smudge on his hand. He coughed, brushing the dust from his face. Lifting it with care, he was surprised by its heft. It felt ancient, substantial, a tangible piece of history. Back in the sliver of light, he scrutinized it further. The leather felt fragile, threatening to flake at the edges. The pages were yellowed and delicate, almost translucent. The book fell open readily to the beginning, its spine long since surrendered. The initial page held an intricate illustration, rendered by hand in faded pigments. A swirling vortex of clouds and waves dominated the scene, with a solitary figure suspended above, radiating luminescence. He peered closer, attempting to discern the details. The figure had long, flowing locks and a serene countenance. Beneath the artwork, elaborate script proclaimed, "In the beginning, recognition dawned instantly." It was a Bible. He leafed through the pages, his eyes widening in astonishment. The volume overflowed with illustrations, each more enthralling than the last. He beheld Adam and Eve in Eden, amidst exuberant flora and fantastical fauna. Noah's Ark, a colossal vessel teeming with creatures, pitched on a tempestuous sea. David facing Goliath, a lone figure armed only with a slingshot, defying a mountainous giant. These were not the sanitized Sunday school portrayals he knew. They were raw, visceral, charged with emotion and drama. The artists had captured the stark dread in Goliath's gaze, the unwavering resolve in David's posture. The pictures breathed life into the stories as never before. He paused at an illustration of the Tower of Babel, a monumental edifice piercing the sky, surrounded by a vibrant city. The sheer scale stunned him, the architecture mesmerizing in its intricacy. It seemed as if the artist had personally witnessed the tower, having journeyed back to chronicle its rise. He traced the tower's lines with a fingertip, picturing the clamor and frenzy of the construction, the cacophony of languages, the ambition and hubris that spelled its doom. Absorbed in the illustrations, Eli failed to notice the cessation of the rain. The clouds had yielded, and a shaft of golden sunlight poured through the window crack, illuminating the Bible's pages. He started as a voice called his name. "Eli? Eli, where are you, son?" It was Grandpa Samuel. Eli carefully closed the Bible, marking his place with a brittle, brown-pressed flower functioning as a bookmark. He scrambled up, clutching the book close. "Up here, Grandpa," he responded, his voice echoing within the cavernous space. Grandpa Samuel slowly ascended the groaning attic stairs, his pace measured and deliberate. He entered the attic, his eyes adjusting to the diminished light. A smile touched his lips as he spotted Eli. "What are you doing up here, Eli? I thought you were watching a movie." "I was bored," Eli explained, "so I came up to explore. Look what I found." He presented the Bible. Grandpa Samuel accepted the book, his gaze widening slightly as he studied the cover. His fingers grazed the worn leather, a softening in his expression. "Well now," he murmured, a quiet reverence in his tone. "Where'd you find this old treasure?" Underneath that tapestry, Eli answered, gesturing toward the faded fabric. What is it? He already knew, yet he wanted his grandpa's explanation. It's an old family Bible, Grandpa Samuel replied, his voice a low timbre. Belonged to your great-great-grandmother, I reckon. It's been up here for ages. Eli's face brightened. Can I look at it? Of course, you can, Grandpa Samuel responded, returning the book. It's full of stories, Eli. Stories passed down through generations. Eli turned to the picture of the Tower of Babel. These pictures are incredible. Did you see the tower? It's gigantic. Grandpa Samuel peered over Eli's shoulder, a twinkle in his eyes. Aye, that's quite a tower. A symbol of human aspiration, reaching for the heavens. The Lord wasn't too pleased with that. Why not? Eli inquired, with genuine curiosity. Grandpa Samuel chuckled softly. Well, they were getting a bit too puffed up, son. Believed they could be as powerful as the Almighty himself. That never turns out well. Eli scrutinized the illustration, his brow furrowed. But what if they just wanted to build something really awesome? Something amazing? Grandpa Samuel sighed, settling onto a wooden crate. It's not just about erecting something impressive, Eli. It's about the intent. They weren't building it to honor the Lord, they were building it for themselves. They wanted fame, to be immortalized. That's pride, Eli, and pride always comes before a fall. Eli pondered this for a moment. So, God destroyed the tower. He didn't exactly wreck it, Grandpa Samuel clarified. He scrambled their languages. They couldn't understand each other, so they couldn't complete the tower. They scattered across the globe, speaking different tongues. That's why we have different languages. Eli asked, his eyes widening in comprehension. That's the narrative, Grandpa Samuel said, a hint of skepticism coloring his voice. Whether you believe it or not, that's up to you. Eli gazed at the illustration again, his mind swirling. He loved narratives, especially ones brimming with mystery and wonder. Yet, he also appreciated science and logic. He remained uncertain what to accept. Did you read this Bible when you were a kid, Grandpa? He queried. Grandpa Samuel nodded slowly. I did. My own grandpa, your great-great-grandfather, used to read from it every Sunday. He believed every word. And you? Eli pressed, his voice hushed. Do you believe every word? Grandpa Samuel paused, his gaze distant. I believe some of it, he said at last. I believe in the strength of faith, the importance of compassion, the necessity of hope. But I also believe in questioning, in finding your own truth. This book, he tapped the Bible, is a compass, not a set of rules. It's full of wisdom, but also full of stories that have been interpreted and reinterpreted for centuries. You must determine what you believe. Eli looked down at the Bible, his fingers tracing the faded gilt. It was more than simply an aged volume. It was a connection to his lineage, a repository of stories, a puzzle awaiting unraveling. Can I keep it, Grandpa? He asked. Can I read it? Grandpa Samuel smiled. Of course, you can, Eli. It's yours now. Just be careful with it. It's delicate. Eli hugged the Bible tightly, a surge of excitement bubbling within. He couldn't wait to delve into its pages, explore its tales, uncover its secrets. He suspected this ancient book would lead him on an extraordinary journey. Thanks, Grandpa, he responded, his voice filled with gratitude. This is the best rainy day ever. Grandpa Samuel chuckled. I'm glad you think so, Eli. Now, come on, let's head downstairs. I'll make us some hot chocolate. Eli followed his grandpa down the creaking steps, the old Bible tucked securely under his arm. The rain had ceased entirely, and the sun blazed, casting long shadows across the attic floor. As he descended, he glanced back at the dusty space, a sense of anticipation and wonder filling his heart. The attic, once a storehouse of forgotten relics, had transformed into a portal to a realm of tales, a realm of belief and doubt, a realm awaiting exploration. A world begins. The morning unfolded with Eli's signature burnt toast alongside his grandpa Samuel's surprisingly palatable scrambled eggs. Afterwards, they gravitated towards the time-worn, floral armchair in the living room. The family Bible, weighty and cool against Eli's denim-clad legs, settled onto his lap. Sunlight poured through the window, igniting a silent ballet of dust motes, ephemeral dancers in the golden shafts. "Ready to delve in, Eli?" Grandpa Samuel inquired, his gaze alive with anticipation, perched beside him with spectacles already in place. Eli nodded, a knot tightening in his throat. This felt like a threshold, the beginning of something profound. His eyes caught on the illustration adorning the opening page, a vibrant, swirling kaleidoscope, unseen until now. Where do we even begin? At the very genesis, naturally. Grandpa Samuel's voice deepened, adopting the captivating rhythm of a seasoned bard, instantly ensnaring Eli. He reached over, his hand a comforting weight atop Eli's on the Bible. Genesis. The origin. And he commenced. In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty, darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. Eli's eyelids closed. Initially, only the profound indigo of inner vision. Then, a nascent ember, a point of luminescence in inky oblivion. He conjured the stark isolation of that single spark, lost in an immeasurable ocean of night. Grandpa Samuel's narration acted as a constant compass amidst Eli's reverie. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. The spark burgeoned. Not with a cataclysmic explosion, but a soft, all-enveloping radiance. Eli visualized the retreat of shadows, banished by the burgeoning glow. He wasn't just auditing the words, he was living them. He sensed the warmth caressing his face, watched the darkness shrink into nothingness. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. Eli opened his eyes, momentarily blinded by the sunlit room. He turned to his grandpa, met with a knowing smile. "Imagine that, Eli," he murmured. Before the dawn of sunrises, the allure of the moon, there existed only God and his command. A shiver tracked down Eli's spine. The sheer scale, the raw power it implied, evaded his grasp. He refocused on the Bible, the stark monochrome etching of a solitary hand reaching into swirling murk. It felt insufficient, a poor attempt to capture something so fundamentally immense. Grandpa Samuel continued the reading. And God said, "Let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water." So God made the vault and separated the water under the vault from the water above it. And it was so. God called the vault sky. And there was evening, and there was morning, the second day. This time, Eli envisioned torrents. An encompassing, churning sea swallowing all. Slowly, a colossal dome materialized, forcing the deluge apart. He saw the dome's underside glimmering, reflecting the nascent light. It defied logic, water suspended above water, but in Eli's mind's eye, it resonated as reality. And God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let dry ground appear." And it was so. God called the dry ground land, and the gathered waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Eli grounded himself, picturing emerging earth, a muddy, desolate terrain expanding endlessly. He envisioned the oceans, boundless and deep, teeming with shrouded life. A powerful juxtaposition, the barren landscape meeting the enigmatic depths. A challenge brewed, how could he reconcile this stark image with the familiar verdant hills of home? How could such desolate beginnings beget such vibrant beauty? And God said, "Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds." And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants bearing seed according to their kinds and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning the third day. Eli's mind painted a landscape reborn. Tiny sprouts burst skyward, unfurling into emerald leaves. Trees ascended, their limbs heavy with ripening bounty. Color exploded, transforming desolation into paradise. He inhaled the phantom scents, the rich perfume of damp earth, the delicate sweetness of blossoms, the compelling aroma of ripe fruit. He was so lost in the spectacle he almost missed Grandpa Samuel's pause. "Eli?" Startled, Eli blinked. He faced his grandpa, his mind still saturated with visions of lush greenery. "Incredible," he breathed. Grandpa Samuel chuckled. "Indeed. Imagine it all emerging from absolute nothingness." He turned pensive. "But heed our discussion, Eli. This represents one interpretation. It's a narrative, and like all worthy narratives, it holds a lesson." Eli considered it all, entranced by the descriptions, the creation's immensity, yet still plagued by doubt. Could this truly be how it unfolded? He stole a glance at the oak outside, its branches swaying in the breeze. It was hard to reconcile such complexity with the idea of instantaneous creation. "Grandpa, could I ask you something?" "Of course." Do you truly have faith in all this?" Grandpa Samuel gifted him with a gentle, knowing smile. "A worthy inquiry, Eli. A very worthy one." And my response? "I place my faith in the tale. I trust its power to illuminate our understanding of ourselves, the world around us, and something greater than both. As for cold, hard fact, that remains for each of us to discern, doesn't it?" He squeezed Eli's hand reassuringly. "Never fear inquiry, Eli. Never shy from doubt. Conviction isn't blind acceptance. It's a quest for personal truth, a resonance with what stirs your soul. And frequently, the questions themselves bear as much weight as the answers." Eli pondered, the antique book heavy in his hands. His gaze fixed on the illustration of a hand reaching into the void. Perhaps it wasn't about absolute belief. Maybe the kernel resided in something else. In the wonder, the enigma, the profound audacity of believing in something transcending individual limitations. He inhaled deeply. "All right," he conceded. "I comprehend. What comes after?" Grandpa Samuel beamed, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "Next, Eli, the cosmos ignites." He reopened the hallowed book and read, "And God said, let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times, and days, and years, and let them be lights in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth." And it was so. The garden and the serpent. Sunlight pierced the attic's stale air, illuminating swirling dust particles as Samuel carefully turned another page, its edges like ancient parchment. He adjusted his glasses, the metallic sheen of the frames catching the light. Thus, he intoned, adopting a dramatic flair, the Creator formed Adam, setting him in Eden, a paradise of untold beauty. Eli, perched on a moth-eaten chest, leaned forward, captivated. He imagined a vibrant realm, fruit heavy on the branches, blossoms releasing heady fragrances. He could almost feel the yielding soil beneath his toes. Dominion over every living thing was granted to Adam, Samuel continued, tracing the time-worn script. He named them, each reflecting its essence. Yet, Adam remained alone. And the divine voice declared, "It is not fitting that man dwell in solitude, a companion, suited to him, I shall create." Eli visualized Adam's solitary wanderings among exotic creatures, a poignant emptiness clinging to him. He knew that ache, that hunger for connection, all too well, especially since he banished the thought. A profound slumber then descended upon Adam, Samuel whispered, his voice imbued with conspiratorial weight. And from his side, a rib was taken, the flesh closing in its wake. And the rib, once part of man, was fashioned into woman, presented to him. Eli frowned, perplexed. A rib? The image felt crude, almost unfair. Wouldn't crafting her from clay, like Adam, have been simpler? Samuel chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "Ah, Eli, you echo inquiries pondered by theologians across the ages. The tale transcends mere mechanics, it speaks of an intrinsic bond between man and woman. From the same essence they spring, eternally intertwined. Eli considered this, picturing two figures rising from a shared origin, their fates bound like intertwined roots. All right, he conceded, a seed of doubt lingering. Now, Samuel declared, his voice regaining vigor, the Creator commanded Adam and Eve, for that was her name, that they partake freely of every tree's bounty, save one, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. For on the day you consume its fruit, came the warning, you shall surely meet your end. Eli imagined the tree, its branches bowed with luminous, tempting fruit. A shiver of anticipation ran through him, the allure of the forbidden. What secrets did that fruit hold? And then, Samuel's tone darkened, came the serpent. Eli's brow furrowed. A serpent? He pictured a sinuous, jade-colored snake gliding through the verdant undergrowth. It spoke, didn't it? Indeed, Samuel confirmed, his eyes alight. The serpent, the most cunning of all creatures. It posed the question, did the divine truly forbid you to eat from any tree in the garden? Eli edged closer, completely absorbed. He could almost hear the serpent's alluring sibilance, the subtle poison of doubt seeping into Eve's mind. The woman responded, we may feast upon the fruit of the trees, but of the tree at the garden's heart, the divine has said, you shall not taste it, nor even touch it, lest you perish. Yet, Samuel continued, thick with dramatic irony, the serpent countered, you shall not surely die. For the divine knows that upon consuming it, your eyes will be opened, and you shall become like the divine, discerning good from evil. Eli's pulse quickened. He understood the pull of temptation, the lure of hidden truths, the yearning to transcend one's limitations. And so, Samuel concluded softly, observing that the tree was pleasing to the palate, delightful to the eye, and offered wisdom. The woman plucked its fruit, tasted it, and offered it to her husband, who stood beside her, and he too consumed it. Eli gasped. He imagined Eve, her hand trembling as she grasped the fruit, the flavor of defiance on her tongue. And Adam, a silent partner in their shared transgression. And then, Samuel recounted, a note of sadness in his voice, their eyes were opened, and they recognized their nakedness. They hastily fashioned coverings of fig leaves. Eli frowned. Why the shame over their bodies? Samuel sighed. Because they had defied the divine. Innocence was lost. Knowledge gained, but at the steep cost of paradise. Eli pondered this. Was knowledge truly a blight? He thought of his grandfather, of the books that lined these walls, each a gateway to uncharted realms and ideas. He couldn't imagine a life devoid of learning. But the serpent, Eli queried, confusion coloring his voice. Why did it goad them to eat? What did it gain? Samuel paused, stroking his beard in contemplation. That, Eli, is a riddle that has preoccupied theologians for eons. Some believe the serpent embodied evil, a force dedicated to defiling the divine's creation. Others see it as a trickster, a symbol of rebellion against dogma. Still others suggest it was merely a catalyst, propelling Adam and Eve toward exercising their free will. Eli chewed his lip, his understanding incomplete. But it just seems strange. A snake holding a conversation. And convincing them to do something so awful. Suddenly, a voice sliced through the stillness. It is strange. Eli and Samuel turned simultaneously to find Anya framed in the doorway, arms crossed, a skeptical expression etched on her face. Her quiet arrival had gone unnoticed. A talking snake. Anya scoffed, amusement lacing her tone. Seriously? And they just bought it? That's absurd. Samuel arched an eyebrow, a hint of amusement playing on his lips. Ah, Anya. Ever the pragmatist. Someone has to be, Anya countered, stepping into the room. She swiped a hand along a bookshelf, leaving a clean trail in the grime. Look, I get the story is supposed to be about. I don't know, temptation or something. But the whole snake thing just nukes the credibility. Why not a talking raven? Or a talking oak? Eli, caught between his grandfather's conviction and Anya's skepticism, shifted his gaze between them. He yearned to embrace the tale, to grasp its symbolic depth, yet Anya's logic resonated. Perhaps, Samuel offered, a glint in his eyes, the serpent should not be interpreted literally. Perhaps it represents the inner voice of doubt, the insidious whisper of temptation that resides within each of us. Anya snorted derisively. Or maybe, she suggested, it's just a story concocted ages ago, and it simply doesn't hold water. Eli looked at Anya, then back at Samuel. The attic seemed to grow colder, the dancing dust motes less enchanting. He was suspended between faith and doubt, between the allure of storytelling and the unyielding clarity of reason. The forbidden fruit, it appeared, wasn't confined to the garden. It was here, in this musty attic, embodied by a serpentine voice and a skeptical spirit. And he, like Adam before him, faced a choice. A world of wickedness. So, Eli began, his finger sketching patterns in the sunlit dust motes. If Adam and Eve blew it, and that's why life's a grind now, then what? Samuel released a sigh, a low growl like distant thunder rolling across the plains. He snapped the Bible shut, the latch clicked like a gavel declaring a guilty verdict. What followed, Eli, is a long and often heartbreaking saga. Their transgression, it unlocked something terrible. Anya, perched precariously on a tower of forgotten textbooks, arched an eyebrow. Unlocked what? More serpentine smooth talkers. Ignoring her, Samuel kept his focus on Eli. A gateway to depravity. To a reality where the lines between virtue and vice became hazy. Difficult to discern. Where humanity repeatedly embraced the shadows. Eli's brow furrowed. But why would anyone do that? If God is all good, the creator of everything, why the compulsion to be wicked? Samuel scrubbed a hand through his thinning hair. That, my boy, is the conundrum that has occupied theologians for ages. Free will, some posit. The power of choice, even if it leads down the wrong path. God bestowed upon us the capacity for love, but love cannot be coerced, it must be freely offered. And that very freedom births the possibility of refusal, of disobedience. But wouldn't it be better if we lacked that freedom? Eli persisted, his face scrunched in contemplation. If inherent goodness was our only setting? Conceivably. But then we'd be automatons, mere puppets dancing on strings, not individuals. We'd be reciting lines, not experiencing authentic lives. What merit would love possess then? What worth would inherent goodness hold if it weren't a conscious selection? Samuel paused, allowing his words to steep in the silence. The world post-Eden descended into an era of intensifying darkness. Cain murdered Abel in a surge of envy. Savagery and loathing spread like a virulent contagion. People forsook God, venerating idols and indulging in all sorts of iniquity. Eli's eyes grew wide. Like, what kind of iniquity? Samuel's face darkened. Like, injustice. The powerful exploiting the vulnerable. Avarice, coveting what isn't yours. Deceit, manipulating others for personal advantage. And cruelty, the intentional infliction of anguish and suffering. All of it, Eli, a rejection of God's benevolence, an embrace of the abyss. Anya scoffed. Sounds like business as usual. Samuel finally turned to her, his expression laced with a weariness that etched years onto his face. Anya, I understand your skepticism. You perceive the world in its raw, imperfect state. But don't let your experiences eclipse the potential for good. Don't allow the encroaching gloom to snuff out the flicker of hope residing within you. Hope's a dead end, Anya snapped back, crossing her arms. Just look around. The planet's still a disaster zone. Politicians fabricate. Corporations defraud. People are starving while others are discarding food. That's just the way it is. That is the reality now, Samuel corrected, his tone gentle. But it's not an immutable destiny. The narratives in the Bible, Eli, they aren't merely ancient history. They function as warnings, as lessons. They serve as a constant reminder that we wield the power to choose, to instigate change, to forge a more equitable world. He shifted his gaze back to Eli. God witnessed the proliferation of wickedness, Eli. He observed the escalation of violence and the pervasive corruption. And he was heartbroken. It grieved him that his creation, beings made in his very image, had plummeted so far from grace. Confusion clouded Eli's face. But if God is omnipotent, why didn't he intervene? Why didn't he simply restore everyone to goodness? Samuel sighed once more. That's yet another question that has vexed humankind for millennia. Why does God permit suffering? Why does he allow evil to flourish? There are no pat answers, Eli. But one thing is irrefutable: God doesn't abandon his creation. He doesn't avert his gaze from our pain. He extends a pathway back to him, a route back to enlightenment, through forgiveness, through redemption, through love. Anya shifted her weight on the stack of books. Redemption? For what? For existing? We're all just scrambling to survive. And some survive by victimizing others, Samuel countered, his voice steady but not unkind. Therein lies the choice. We can opt to survive at any expense, or we can commit to building a world where everyone has the opportunity to flourish. Eli remained quiet, absorbing all that had been said. The dust motes continued their silent dance in the sunbeams, oblivious to the weighty matters discussed. He pictured the world Samuel described, a place teeming with brutality and malevolence, where people consciously inflicted pain on one another. It was difficult to reconcile with the familiar world he inhabited, the world of his family, his friends, his quiet town. Yet, he was also aware that adversity existed. He had witnessed it on television, overheard it in hushed conversations. He recalled Mrs. Henderson, the elderly neighbor whose home had been burglarized the previous year. He remembered the school bullies who tormented the weaker students. He recalled the heated exchanges he occasionally heard between his parents, the cutting words that left a lingering bitterness. But why, he repeated, his voice barely audible. Why do people want to be bad? What do they gain from it? Samuel regarded him with a mixture of sorrow and empathy. Sometimes, Eli, people are hurting. They bear deep-seated wounds, and they lash out at others as a result. Sometimes, they are gripped by fear, afraid of being vulnerable, of being hurt, so they attempt to control those around them. And sometimes people are simply egotistical. They are driven by their own desires, with little regard for the well-being of others. He paused, his eyes locking with Eli's. But that doesn't vindicate their actions. It doesn't make it acceptable. We all bear the responsibility to choose virtue, to choose love, to choose compassion, even when it presents a challenge. Anya hopped down from her perch and stretched languidly. Well, I'm going to rustle up some grub. All this discourse about depravity has given me a craving. She ambled toward the attic door. Don't let these old yarns get you down, kid. The world's always been a mess, and it probably always will be. She disappeared down the stairs, leaving Eli and Samuel enveloped in the hushed, dusty atmosphere of the attic. The sun had traveled, casting elongated shadows across the space. Eli looked at Samuel, his eyes brimming with questions. What happened next, Grandpa? After God saw how dire things had become. Samuel smiled, a fragile spark of hope illuminating his eyes. That, Eli, is a narrative woven with threads of both devastation and redemption. It's the tale of a cataclysmic flood, and a covenant that God would never again unleash such a deluge upon the earth. The story of a man named Noah, and an ark teeming with creatures. A saga of a fresh start. He retrieved the Bible, his fingers gently caressing the worn cover. Are you ready to hear it unfold? Eli nodded, his earlier enthusiasm tempered by a newfound understanding of the darkness that permeated the world. He was prepared to hear the tale, but he now comprehended that it wouldn't be a simple fable. It would be a chronicle of trials, of choices, of an ongoing struggle between good and evil. A battle that, it appeared, continued to rage even now. Noah's Ark. after Adam and Eve's lineage blossomed across the earth, malevolence sprouted like a noxious vine, choking out goodness, Grandpa Samuel began, his voice adopting the well-worn inflections of a master storyteller. He nestled deeper into his favorite armchair as the afternoon sun painted elongated silhouettes onto the attic's dusty plank floor. The Almighty witnessed the rampant depravity consuming humankind, the brutality that defiled the land, and profound sorrow filled his heart. He regretted his creation. Eli, perched on the edge of a time-worn steamer trunk, leaned in, eyes wide with anticipation. Anya, cross-legged on a flattened cardboard square, regarded him with subdued interest. Yet, Samuel's tone gentled, amidst the corruption existed a just man. Noah. He garnered divine favor. A man of integrity, faultless in his generation, he walked faithfully with the Lord. Samuel then recounted God's instruction to Noah, to construct an ark, an immense vessel of cypress wood, meticulously sealed against the encroaching waters. 300 cubits in length, 50 in breadth, and 30 in height, he stated, underscoring the sheer magnitude of the project. With levels and chambers for kin and, well, you shall see. Eli's mind raced. He envisioned Noah, a man sculpted by sun and labor, meticulously shaping timber under a watchful divine gaze. He pictured the ark materializing, a monumental, seemingly impossible edifice challenging the natural order. The Creator commanded Noah to gather into the ark breeding pairs of all life, male and female, to preserve them, Samuel continued. Avian, beast, reptile, every species that crept, crawled, or soared. Eli's eyes grew even wider. He visualized a boisterous parade of creatures converging towards the colossal vessel. Elephants plodding alongside chattering monkeys, sinew snakes sharing space with regal lions, and flocks of birds swirling overhead in a vibrant, living tapestry. He could almost perceive the clamorous symphony, the roars, the trills, the sibilant whispers, the guttural cries, an orchestra of the animal realm. He imagined Noah patiently ushering them, 2 by 2, along the ascending ramp and into the ark's spacious interior. Imagine, Eli exclaimed, his voice brimming with wonder, giraffes craning their necks out, maybe monkeys swinging like acrobats inside. He hopped off the trunk, imitating the creatures with expansive gestures, flapping his arms like a soaring eagle, then waddling comically as a penguin. Anya observed the performance, a subtle smile gracing her lips. When he paused, slightly breathless, she interjected, skepticism coloring her tone. But Grandpa, how could Noah possibly cram all those beasts aboard a single boat? And what did they eat? Many animals have highly specific diets, and others consume prodigious amounts. Think of the provisions necessary. She gestured expansively, highlighting the apparent impossibility of the task. Samuel chuckled, a warm, reassuring resonance. Excellent questions, Anya. One's debated for ages. Scripture doesn't furnish every granular detail. It omits specifics regarding Noah's logistical prowess. Perhaps the creatures entered a state of dormancy, lessening their appetite. Perhaps Providence intervened in ways beyond our comprehension. The core lies not in exacting numbers or precise rations, but in Noah's unwavering faith, his obedience to the Almighty, and the divine promise of preservation. He resumed the narrative, detailing the onset of rain, a relentless downpour persisting for 40 days and nights. The water surged, inundating the earth, even submerging the loftiest peaks. All terrestrial life beyond the ark perished. Only Noah, his kin, and the ark's inhabitants were spared. Eli shuddered, imagining the rising torrents, the desperate wails of those left behind. He felt a pang of empathy for those who disregarded divine warnings. Anya, however, remained unconvinced. 40 days and nights? Copious rainfall, surely. But enough to drown the world? It sounds exaggerated, Grandpa. She leaned back, her expression incredulous. And where did all that water disappear to? Samuel smiled patiently. Again, Anya, the Bible offers no scientific explanation. Some scholars posit a localized event, not a global cataclysm. Others suggest a different Earth, with greater atmospheric or subterranean reservoirs. Some view the deluge symbolically, as a cleansing of wickedness. The waters ebbed, mountain peaks reappeared, and the soil slowly emerged, drying. He paused, carefully choosing his words. The core of the tale resides not in the flood's literal mechanics, but in its inherent lesson. And that lesson is? Eli inquired, his brow furrowed in concentration. The lesson of judgment coupled with redemption, Samuel responded. God judged the wickedness of humankind, but extended salvation through Noah's righteousness. The flood purged the old world, paving the way for a fresh start. He elaborated on the ark's eventual grounding on Ararat's mountains after months of relentless floating. Noah released a raven, then a dove, to ascertain the water's recession. The dove's return bearing an olive sprig signaled the flood cessation. And then? Eli pressed, eager for the climax. Noah, his loved ones, and the animal kingdom disembarked onto a cleansed earth, a rejuvenated world, Samuel related. Noah erected an altar, offering sacrifices in gratitude. And God, in his boundless mercy, entered into a covenant, vowing never again to obliterate the world by flood. As a token of this pact, he painted a rainbow across the sky. Eli's gaze drifted towards the attic window. The sun, now lower on the horizon, bathed the space in a warm, honeyed light. He pictured a vibrant arc stretching across the heavens, a symbol of rebirth and hope. Anya hesitated, her eyes fixed on the floor. So, the rainbow is meant to remind us that he won't flood everything again, she finally queried. Precisely, Samuel affirmed. A reminder of Providence's promise, his enduring compassion, and his commitment to his creation. He paused, adding, it's also a stark reminder of the consequences of wickedness and the importance of embracing a righteous path. Eli contemplated the tale of Noah, the ark, and the great flood. He perceived it as a testament to faith's power, the gravity of obedience, and the prospect of new beginnings. But he also acknowledged the devastation, the loss of life, and the immensity of divine power. It was a narrative that both stirred and intimidated him. Anya, conversely, seemed more preoccupied than inspired. The story's perceived logical inconsistencies, the scientific improbabilities, appeared to eclipse any message of faith or hope. The Rainbow Promise. 40 days, Grandpa Samuel intoned, his voice a resonant hum that resonated in Eli's chest. 40 days the heavens wept, and 40 nights. But at long last, the deluge ceased. The ark, a solitary sentinel amid devastation, gradually steadied as the waters surrendered their grip. Eli conjured the image, that immense, silent vessel, rocking like a cradle on a planet submerged, a vast, muddy expanse. A shiver traced his spine as he contemplated the burden borne by Noah, the crushing solitude he must have endured. He shifted his gaze to Anya, perched on the sofa's edge, her expression an enigma. Noah, Samuel continued, reclaiming Eli's attention, exercised patience. Trusting in divine guidance. In time, he unlatched a window built high into the ark and released a raven. It winged its way back and forth, searching for respite, awaiting the land's re-emergence. Why a raven, though? Eli wondered, momentarily diverted. Couldn't it have been something a little more agreeable? Samuel chuckled, a warm, rumbling sound. A raven is a scavenger, Eli, resourceful and self-reliant. It wouldn't necessarily return if it discovered sustenance. Noah needed confirmation of solid ground. After the raven's fruitless mission, he dispatched a dove. A dramatic spark lit Samuel's eyes. The first sortie proved barren, the dove returned empty-beaked, unable to find a perch, for the waters remained dominant. Noah waited another week and sent the dove forth once more. Eli leaned in, captivated. He envisioned the small, white bird, its wings laboring against the boundless sky, seeking some token of renewed hope. And then, he pressed. And then, Samuel whispered, his voice hushed with anticipation, the dove materialized in the gloaming, bearing in its beak a freshly severed olive sprig. Noah knew then that the submerged landscape was yielding, allowing vegetation to flourish. Eli gasped, a sense of wonder washing over him. He could almost discern the vibrant green leaf, a miniature banner of life against the monotone of the receding flood. He sought Anya's eyes, keen to share the moment, but she merely arched a brow in reply. He tarried another 7 days. Samuel pressed on, undeterred, and released the dove yet again. This time, it vanished from sight. Noah understood it had discovered a haven. Anya finally broke her silence, her tone measured. So, he just abandoned it? After its service. It had earned its freedom, Anya, Eli countered, feeling a twinge of compassion for the liberated dove. A chance at a fresh start. Samuel delivered an affirming nod. Precisely. Noah then dismantled the ark's covering and surveyed the surroundings. The earth was parched. Divinely prompted, Noah ushered forth all the creatures and his kin, charged with replenishing the world. Eli pictured the unfolding scene, the ark doors groaning open, the animals spilling into the welcoming sunlight, blinking and stretching after their lengthy internment. The atmosphere must have resonated with birdsong and the whisper of nascent leaves, a symphony of revival. And then, Samuel declared, his voice adopting a reverent timbre, God forged a covenant with Noah, a solemn pledge never again to unleash such a cataclysm upon all living things. And as a testament to this eternal pact, he placed his bow in the heavens. He paused, meeting Eli's gaze squarely. The rainbow, Eli. The rainbow embodies God's pledge. Eli's breath hitched. He had witnessed rainbows countless times, luminous arcs painted across the sky after summer storms. But he had never perceived them as emblems, tangible reminders of a sacred vow. He closed his eyes, envisioning the vibrant spectrum spanning the horizon, a bridge between the terrestrial and the divine. A sudden wave of tranquility washed over him, imparting a deep sense of anticipation. He opened his eyes to find Anya. Isn't it wondrous? Anya's gaze was directed outside, her focus unwavering on the somber sky. A fragile ray of light fought its way through the cloud cover. She turned back to Eli, her expression pensive. It's a beautiful narrative, Eli, she conceded, her voice carefully modulated. The symbolism of the rainbow, the reassurance. It's a potent symbol of hope and regeneration. Exactly. Eli affirmed, bouncing with excitement. It signifies that everything will ultimately be all right, even when disaster strikes. Anya hesitated, a furrow forming on her brow. But what? Eli queried, his enthusiasm momentarily dampened. But Anya elaborated, it doesn't alter the inherent implausibility of the account. The logistics of accommodating that multitude of animals, nourishing them, maintaining their health, and the sheer volume of water necessary to engulf the entire globe, it defies scientific possibility. Eli frowned, a shadow crossing his features. He preferred not to dissect the story's practicality. He desired to preserve its magic, the soothing balm of its promise. Samuel cleared his throat, a gentle interruption. Anya, you are an intelligent and discerning young woman. It is commendable to question. However, the literal rendition is not always the sole interpretation. The saga of Noah transcends a mere inundation. It speaks of conviction, of adherence, of the wages of wickedness, and of God's unwavering mercy and affection for humanity. Anya contemplated his words, her brow deeply creased. I grasp that, she replied slowly. I recognize the allegorical value, the moral instruction. The rainbow is a compelling image, a powerful affirmation of optimism. But accepting its factual occurrence, that's where I falter. Eli's gaze darted between Anya and Grandpa Samuel, a sense of bewilderment creeping in. He yearned to believe implicitly, to embrace the narrative without reservation. Yet, Anya's skepticism lingered like an insistent echo, undermining his conviction. Samuel offered a gentle smile. And that is perfectly acceptable, Anya. Faith is a journey of discovery, not a fixed destination. It is about posing inquiries, grappling with uncertainty, and ultimately forging your own comprehension of the truth. He turned his attention to Eli. And what of you, Eli? What resonance does the tale of Noah and the rainbow hold for you? Eli paused, grappling to articulate his sentiment. It suggests that even when circumstances appear bleak, the potential for renewal always persists, he ventured finally. And that God, or some benevolent force, is watching over us, pledging protection. He glanced tentatively at Anya, hoping his words wouldn't be dismissed. She returned his gaze, a fleeting hint of understanding flickering in her eyes. Samuel nodded sagely, his eyes twinkling. Eloquent, Eli. Very well put. Now, might I propose some confectionaries? All this discourse of deluges has roused my appetite. He levered himself from his armchair, his movements surprisingly nimble for his years. Eli and Anya followed him into the kitchen, the inviting fragrance of cinnamon and vanilla permeating the atmosphere. As he nibbled on a cookie, Eli couldn't dismiss the sensation that he stood at a pivotal juncture. He longed to embrace his grandfather's law, to unearth solace and significance within their ancient wisdom. But he equally respected Anya's intellect and her devotion to logic and reason. He knew that his spiritual odyssey was merely beginning, an uncharted path stretching before him. He peered out the kitchen window, yearning to glimpse a rainbow, a beacon of hope in an uncertain world. Abraham's journey. Next up, Grandpa Samuel declared, his spectacles perched precariously on his nose, Abraham. Now, there was a man attuned to the divine. Eli, lost in tracing the table's grain, jolted upright. Abraham? The one with the sacrifice. Samuel's expression turned somber. The very same. But patience. First, consider his origins. He dwelled in Ur, a Mesopotamian hub, enjoying ease, family, every earthly comfort. Anya, perched bird-like on the sill, eyes glued to the bustling street, added, Ur thrived as a nexus of trade and innovation. Excavations reveal impressive engineering and societal complexity. Samuel beamed. Precisely. Now, envision relinquishing it all. Abandoning the known. That's the divine request made of Abraham. To journey to a land promised to him and his progeny. Eli's eyes widened. Just like that? He simply departed. Simply departed, Samuel affirmed. Without charted routes, devoid of assurances. Pure trust. Absolute faith in divine guidance. Incredible, Eli murmured, picturing himself shedding possessions, the console, the comics, everything familiar. A terrifying yet thrilling prospect. Anya hopped down, arms crossed. It's a compelling tale, certainly. Yet, historical context matters. Drought, political strife, factors that may have spurred Abraham's clan's relocation. Religious narratives often simplify intricate realities. Samuel conceded, undoubtedly, Anya. Always more to the tapestry. The Bible, however, spotlights Abraham's bedrock faith, his obedience to a divine call, however illogical it seemed. He focused on Eli. That's the story's core, Eli. The audacity to venture into the unknown, anchored by something larger than yourself. Eli lifted the time-worn Bible, tracing the gilded title. He struggled to imagine Abraham, a common man, receiving such an uncommon decree. What resonance would such a calling evoke? What depth of faith would be required? He glanced at Anya, now scrutinizing a fissure in the wall's plaster. Did she ever experience such resonance? The back door crashed open, Caleb swaggering in, basketball cradled in his arm. What's with the sermon? He scoffed, casually tossing the ball onto the couch. Still lost in those ancient myths, Eli. Eli's hackles rose. They're not myths, Caleb. They are accounts of belief. Caleb emitted a dry chuckle. Belief? Please. You swallow that stuff whole? An old geezer building a boat for every animal? Some dude abandoning his life on a hunch. He rolled his eyes dramatically. Come on, Eli, snap out of it. Anya moved forward, eyes flashing. There's merit in examining varied viewpoints, Caleb, regardless of your convictions. Oh, so you're buying in now, Anya? Caleb's smirk widened. Thought you were too sharp for that. Anya's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. My intellectual pursuits are not subject to your validation. Caleb brushed her off, turning back to Eli. It's just sad, man. You're a bright kid. Don't squander your time on this junk. He snatched up his basketball. Come on, let's hit the court. Maybe I can beat some sense into you. Eli hesitated. He yearned to defend the narratives, articulate their profound effect, but Caleb's derision silenced him. He sought reassurance from Grandpa Samuel, who offered only a gentle smile. Go on, Eli, Samuel encouraged. A bit of exercise will serve you well. We can resume our discussion later. Eli grabbed his jacket, trailing Caleb out, a knot of frustration tightening his gut. He hungered to comprehend these tales, to dissect their meaning, yet Caleb's mockery sowed seeds of doubt. Was he being gullible? Wasting precious time on mere fabrications? As they headed towards the basketball court, Caleb's goading persisted. Seriously, Eli, are you going full-on biblical? Robe and sandals next. Spouting scripture on the corner. Eli jammed his hands into his pockets, attempting to ignore him. He knew Caleb sought a reaction, and succeeded. A prickle of doubt surfaced, a quiet voice questioning the validity of everything he was absorbing. Reaching the court, Caleb immediately launched into a display, weaving the ball effortlessly and sinking a three-pointer. See, Eli, he boasted, grinning. This is tangible. This is something you achieve. Not some phantom sky daddy. Eli took the ball, bouncing it methodically, attempting to still his thoughts. Abraham resurfaced in his mind, forsaking comfort for the unknown, guided only by faith. Then Noah, constructing his ark amidst scorn. And Grandpa Samuel, imparting these stories with such fervent conviction. He inhaled deeply and shot. The ball clanked against the rim, rebounding uselessly. Caleb laughed. Maybe stick to parables, Eli. Hoops clearly aren't your forte. Eli retrieved the ball, a newfound resolve solidifying his gaze. He might lack athletic prowess, he might not possess definitive answers, but he refused to let Caleb's cynicism dictate his beliefs. He would persist in exploring these narratives, challenging their premises, forging his personal truth. He dribbled once more, grounding himself in the ball's textured feel. He was neither Abraham nor Noah. He was simply Eli, a boy navigating life's complexities. And perhaps, just perhaps, that was sufficient. He met Caleb's gaze, a faint smile gracing his lips. Perhaps, he responded, but I'm not backing down yet. A promise fulfilled. Picture it, Eli, Grandpa Samuel began, his voice a reverent whisper, Abraham, a centenarian, and Sarah, past 90. Childbearing was a forgotten dream. Yet, the Almighty promised them posterity, an inheritor. Eli, sprawled across the time-worn Persian, pushed himself up. Sunlight poured through the window, igniting motes of dust that pirouetted like golden sprites. Instantly, he was enthralled. 90? Older than Mrs. Gable. How could she possibly? Ah, lad, Samuel chuckled, the sound a comforting rumble, that's the marvel. Divine power knows no bounds. It breathes existence into barrenness, rendering the impossible a reality. Eli's thoughts spun. Caleb would sneer, surely. Some quip about ancient Babylonian fertility clinics. But Eli? Eli yearned to believe, in the sheer, unfettered magnificence of it all. So, she conceived, just like that. Essentially, Samuel replied, eyes alight with amusement. They christened him Isaac, meaning he laughs, for Sarah's initial reaction to the news. Unbelief reigned. He lifted his weathered Bible, fingers tracing the gilt lettering on its cover. A testament to unwavering trust, Eli. A vow fulfilled against all expectations. Eli straightened, nascent skepticism receding. But actual miracles don't really occur, do they? Not like in stories. The question slipped out, bordering on sacrilege, yet doubt persisted. Samuel shut the Bible gently, placing it on the table. What constitutes a miracle, Eli? Merely a breach of natural laws? Or something deeper? Perhaps it's the blossoming of hope amidst despair's wasteland. Perhaps it's love's ultimate triumph. Perhaps it's the cosmos conspiring in an almost unthinkable fashion. He paused, gaze softening. I am a believer, Eli. I've witnessed them, small and momentous, throughout my days. Eli pondered this. His grandfather's near-fatal heart attack last year flashed through his mind. Doctors had offered little hope, yet Samuel had rallied. Was that divine intervention? He couldn't say. He simply felt an urge to comprehend. Meanwhile, across town, Anya was ensconced at a massive oak desk in the library's silent reading room. Sunlight streamed through towering arched windows, painting elongated shadows across the floor. The mingled aromas of aged paper and binding glue hung in the air. Piles of volumes hemmed her in, their titles a medley of bygone eras, archaeological studies, and theological inquiries. Mrs. Rosen, the librarian, spectacles perched precariously on her nose and sporting an ever-present gentle smile, approached. Discovering what you require, Anya. Almost, Anya replied, absently pushing back a strand of dark hair. I'm researching the historical landscape surrounding the Abraham narrative. I need details on its culture, and the era in question. Mrs. Rosen's face lit up. Splendid. The Abraham story is compelling on both religious and historical fronts. Have you perused Woolley's excavations at your? Anya shook her head. Not as yet. I began with wider texts on Mesopotamian society, but they lack specific insight into Abraham's journey. Mrs. Rosen gestured toward a looming bookshelf. Allow me to assist. Woolley's work is considered a foundational text. He unearthed a wealth of knowledge about its societal structure, and its religious customs. They moved toward the bookshelf, Mrs. Rosen skillfully navigating the rows of spines. One must remember, she murmured, lowering her voice in confidence, that history rarely presents a clear-cut picture. Multiple viewpoints and interpretations always exist. She retrieved a substantial volume from the shelf, its cover worn smooth. Examine this book alongside others. Correlate the archaeological discoveries with the biblical account. Arrive at your own conclusions. Anya accepted the book, its weight substantial in her hands. That's precisely my aim, she stated, a spark of resolve in her eyes. I want authentic understanding, not blind acceptance. Mrs. Rosen nodded approvingly. The mark of a true seeker, Anya. Never cease questioning, never cease searching. She paused, adding with a knowing wink, and never hesitate to seek guidance. I am always here to point you in a fruitful direction. Back at Samuel's home, Eli wrestled still with the notion of miracles. He acknowledged science's explanatory power, yet knew it fell short of completeness. He wondered if faith meant consciously embracing belief despite insufficient evidence. Grandpa, he probed, do you think people in ancient times were simply more inclined to believe? Before scientific advancements and all. Samuel stroked his beard thoughtfully. Perhaps. Yet, I suspect human nature remains remarkably constant, Eli. People have always questioned, always harbored doubts. Faith isn't the absence of skepticism, but the fortitude to believe regardless. He rose and ambled to the window, his gaze drifting to the oak tree in the yard, its leaves whispering in the soft breeze. Abraham certainly faced his share of uncertainties, I imagine. Leaving hearth and home, his kin, his comfortable existence, that demanded incredible courage, unwavering faith. And Sarah, laughing at the thought of bearing a child at her advanced age, that was pure incredulity. But they chose to trust. He faced Eli, his eyes radiating warmth. The Bible transcends mere storytelling, Eli. It mirrors humanity, with all its brilliance and imperfections. It's about individuals grappling with faith, doubt, love, and loss. It's about the shared human experience. Eli glanced down at the rug, his mind a hive of thoughts. Certainty eluded him. He couldn't yet embrace miracles unequivocally. But one thing resonated, he desired to continue exploring. He craved answers. He wanted to fathom the essence of this ancient book, this family legacy. He yearned to comprehend his own spiritual convictions. Rising to his feet, determination surged through him. "Grandpa," he proposed, "could we resume our reading tomorrow? About Isaac, and what transpired after his birth." Samuel smiled warmly. "Certainly, Eli. Isaac's tale marks only the beginning." He placed a reassuring hand on Eli's shoulder. "The path of faith is a lengthy one, my boy. But it's a journey rich in rewards. The test of faith. Now, Eli," Grandpa Samuel's voice dropped, a theatrical hush descending, "let me recount another trial, a crucible of belief that reverberates even now." He adjusted his spectacles, firelight glinting from the lenses like captured stars. The tale of Abraham and Isaac. Eli nestled into the armchair's embrace, the comforting aroma of aged leather and Grandpa's pipe swirling around him. These stories transported him, weaving a tapestry of the past that somehow felt intensely present. "The Almighty," Grandpa Samuel resumed, after decades of yearning, after promising descendants beyond counting, blessed Abraham with Isaac. He cherished him above all else, the miracle child of his twilight years, the guarantee of his legacy. Eli pictured the scene, a patriarch, finally cradling the son he'd despaired of having, a son who cemented his place in the unfolding saga of humankind. Grandpa Samuel paused, sipping his tea. The silence deepened, punctuated only by the hearth's crackling song. Then, his voice dropped to a near inaudible level. "One day, divine command, take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you hold so dear, and journey to Moriah. Offer him there as a sacrifice upon a mountain I will reveal." Eli recoiled. Sacrifice him? But why on earth would he? Grandpa Samuel's face reflected a deep sorrow. "That, my boy, is the enduring question. The ways of providence often elude our grasp. We cannot always fathom the celestial design." He painted a vivid picture of the trek, the 3 days Abraham and Isaac spent ascending towards Mount Moriah, Isaac burdened with the wood for the pyre, Abraham with fire and blade. He spoke of Abraham's resolute obedience, his suppressed lament, the battlefield within his soul. And then, Grandpa Samuel's voice trembled, they arrived. Abraham constructed the altar, stacked the wood, and bound his son. He raised the knife aloft. Eli squeezed his eyes tight. Unthinkable. No. He wouldn't. He couldn't possibly. Just as Abraham was about to descend the blade, Grandpa Samuel's voice surged with triumphant reprieve, an angel's voice pierced the heavens, "Abraham! Abraham!" And Abraham responded, "Here I am." "Do not harm the boy," the angel declared. "Do nothing to him. For now, I know you revere God, because you have not withheld your son, your only son." Eli opened his eyes, catching his breath. He didn't have to go through with it. No, Eli. A ram, ensnared in the brambles, became God's provision. Abraham offered the ram in his son's stead. Eli sat, stunned into stillness, grappling with the narrative's immensity. It was a chilling, baffling edict. "I don't understand," he finally whispered, his voice shaky. "Why would God even contemplate such a thing? How could Abraham entertain the notion?" Grandpa Samuel exhaled heavily. "It's a thorny narrative, Eli. A story dissected and debated through countless generations. Some view it as a test of unwavering allegiance. Others see it as a symbolic representation of ultimate selflessness. And still others posit that it marks a shift from human sacrifice to animal offerings. But it's still horrendous," Eli protested, shaking his head. "How can anyone venerate a deity who would even entertain such an idea?" He rose, pacing the room, his agitation palpable. "It defies logic." Perhaps, Grandpa Samuel suggested gently, a conversation with Reverend Thomas might offer a fresh perspective. The following afternoon Sir Eli in Reverend Thomas's study, enveloped in the atmosphere of aged tomes and beeswax's gentle fragrance. The Reverend, a commanding figure with gentle eyes and a welcoming smile, listened intently as Eli recounted the harrowing tale of Abraham and Isaac, his voice tinged with bewilderment and resentment. When Eli concluded, Reverend Thomas steepled his fingers and leaned back, thoughtful. A profoundly challenging story, Eli. One that frequently ignites powerful emotions. Your questions resonate deeply. Many have wrestled with this passage down through the ages. But the core question remains, Eli insisted. Why would God demand something so savage of Abraham? Reverend Thomas nodded sagely. The established interpretation emphasizes Abraham's unwavering conviction. The deed itself was secondary to his willingness to heed the divine, even when it defied all rationale and clashed with his paternal affections. It was a stark manifestation of absolute faith. But that doesn't validate it, Eli countered. Unquestioning belief? Simply obeying orders, regardless of morality. There lies the heart of the matter, doesn't it? Reverend Thomas responded, a twinkle in his eye. Can faith be truly turned a blind when it stems from a profound understanding and communion with the divine? Abraham had forged an enduring bond with God over years. He intuitively knew God's inherent goodness, even when baffled by this particular directive. He paused, choosing his words with precision. Consider this, Eli. Picture yourself as a child, requested by your parents to perform a task you find perplexing, difficult, or even unjust. Do you instantly suspect they are attempting to inflict harm? Or do you maintain faith that they act in your best interests, even if you lack the full picture? Eli pondered this. It hinges on the parents, I suppose, he admitted slowly. And on the nature of their request. Precisely, Reverend Thomas affirmed. And Abraham's bond with God was forged in trust, honed by years of devout communication. He firmly believed that God, in his boundless wisdom, acted with purpose, even if that aim remained shrouded from his earthly understanding. But what if God hadn't intervened? Eli pressed, his voice barely audible. What if he had actually carried it out? Reverend Thomas's expression softened considerably. That underscores another crucial element of the story, Eli. Beyond Abraham's faith, there is also God's compassion. God tested Abraham, yes, but he ultimately spared Isaac. He demonstrated that human sacrifice is anathema to him. He provided an alternative, a ram caught within the thicket, emblematic of his mercy and his rejection of violence. He stood and approached the window, gazing out at the tranquil churchyard. The narrative of Abraham and Isaac does not endorse blind subservience. It celebrates the potency of faith, the value of fidelity, and the ultimate triumph of grace over immolation. It serves as a potent reminder that even amidst trials of unimaginable magnitude, the love of God persists. Eli sat quietly, absorbing the Reverend's insights. Complete comprehension still eluded him. The story retained its unsettling, disquieting nature. But Reverend Thomas's explanation offered a ray of illumination, a different vantage point. So, it's not merely about following instructions, Eli said slowly. It's about trusting that a reason exists, even if it is hidden from view. Precisely, Reverend Thomas confirmed, turning to Eli with a kind smile. Faith is not the absence of uncertainty, Eli. It is the fortitude to believe amidst doubt. It is the willingness to place your trust in a force greater than yourself, even when lacking all the answers. Joseph's journey. After Abraham, Grandpa Samuel began, sinking into the familiar embrace of his armchair, comes a tale woven with threads of treachery, absolution, and fresh starts. The saga of Joseph. Eli, who moments before had been idly sketching patterns with his gaze on the rug's time-worn design, focused intently. Which Joseph? Joseph, son of Jacob, also known as Israel. Remember the man who grappled with the divine. A flicker of recognition crossed Eli's face, though the memory felt distant, almost mythical. Right, Jacob. And Joseph. Samuel's lips curved into a gentle smile. He was Jacob's favored son. 11 brothers he had, and for him, Jacob commissioned a splendid tunic, a garment of vibrant hues, some say. 11? That's a houseful. Eli pictured the bustling chaos, a perpetual whirlwind of activity. So, they resented him. Resentment, Eli, is a corrosive force. Joseph also possessed visions, dreams hinting at a future where his brothers would bow before him. Eli's eyes grew wide. He dreamed he was royalty. Not exactly royalty. He envisioned their bundles of wheat paying homage to his own. And on another occasion, the sun, moon, and stars of the cosmos bowed in deference. Eli closed his eyes, summoning the images. Fields of sun-kissed wheat, each stalk heavy with grain, bending reverently before a single, superior sheaf. Above, a celestial ballet, each radiant orb yielding to a lone, incandescent point. He pondered the gravity of such premonitions, the weight of expectation they carried. That's pretty powerful stuff. Indeed. Unsurprisingly, his brothers didn't receive this news with enthusiasm. Samuel chuckled softly. They considered him arrogant, a fanciful dreamer out of touch with reality. One day, while they tended their father's flocks in a distant pasture, Jacob dispatched Joseph to check on their well-being. Eli leaned forward, utterly absorbed. What happened then? Spotting him from afar, they concocted a scheme to do away with him. Eli gasped. Kill him? Over a dream. Resentment, as I mentioned, is a potent poison. Reuben, the eldest, argued against bloodshed, suggesting they cast him into a well instead, secretly intending to liberate Joseph later. And so they did. They tore off his magnificent tunic and plunged him into the dry cistern. Eli frowned, his brow furrowed. That's horrible. Just abandoned him to perish. As they ate, a caravan of Ishmaelite merchants appeared, bound for Egypt. Judah, another brother, proposed selling Joseph into servitude rather than killing him. At least they would profit from his misfortune. Disgust twisted Eli's features. They sold him? Their own flesh and blood. They did. For 20 pieces of silver, they bartered him away. Then they stained Joseph's tunic with goat's blood and presented it to Jacob, leading him to believe a wild beast had devoured his son. Eli shook his head, envisioning Jacob's inconsolable grief, the brothers' remorseless treachery. That's utterly depraved. Indeed. But the tale takes many turns. In Egypt, Joseph was purchased by Potiphar, captain of Pharaoh's guard. Showing remarkable aptitude, Joseph thrived in Potiphar's service and was entrusted with managing his entire estate. So, he was like, in charge. Eli clarified. Similar. However, Potiphar's wife falsely accused Joseph of attempted seduction, resulting in his imprisonment. Unbelievable. Talk about bad luck. Even behind bars, Joseph's destiny shifted. He interpreted the dreams of two fellow inmates, Pharaoh's wine steward and baker. His readings proved true, the cupbearer regained his position, and the baker met his demise. He could decode dreams. Eli asked, his voice brimming with wonder. Actually decipher their meaning. So the narrative unfolds. The cupbearer, however, forgot Joseph until Pharaoh himself was plagued by a perplexing dream that defied interpretation. Then, the cupbearer's memory stirred. And Pharaoh summoned him. Indeed. Pharaoh envisioned 7 robust cows being consumed by 7 emaciated ones, and 7 full, ripe ears of grain swallowed by 7 withered husks. Eli closed his eyes, reconstructing the bizarre tableau. Skeletal cows, ribs protruding, ravenously devouring their plump, healthy counterparts. Shriveled stalks of grain, like bony fingers, clutching and devouring the golden harvest. A disconcerting, unsettling vision. Joseph interpreted the dream as 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine, Samuel continued. He advised Pharaoh to stockpile grain during the years of abundance to withstand the coming hardship. That's genius, Eli said, clearly impressed. So impressed was Pharaoh by Joseph's acumen and foresight that he elevated him to governor over all of Egypt. Incredible! From slave to governor. What a transformation! Eli exclaimed. Indeed. During the 7 bountiful years, Joseph oversaw the accumulation of immense reserves of grain. And when famine gripped the land, Egypt was ready. People journeyed from across the known world to purchase grain, including, unbeknownst to them at first, Joseph's own brothers. Eli's eyes widened in astonishment. No way. They didn't know it was him, did they? Initially, no. Joseph recognized them instantly, but chose not to reveal his identity. He tested them, gauging whether remorse had altered their hearts. He accused them of espionage and insisted that they bring their youngest brother, Benjamin, to Egypt. Eli was completely enthralled, hanging on every word when the piercing school bell shattered the moment. Eli groaned in frustration. "Ooh, I gotta go." "We'll pick up the threads tomorrow," Grandpa Samuel promised, a playful glint in his eyes. There's a great deal more to Joseph's Odyssey. As Eli walked to school, glimpses of Joseph's prophetic dreams flickered in his mind. He reflected on the burden of those visions, the weight of responsibility they entailed. He also mulled over the callous betrayal and the extraordinary fortitude Joseph exhibited. The school day crawled by, his thoughts consumed by the unfolding drama. At lunch, Eli found Anya at their usual table. Caleb and his posse swaggered over, their shadows encroaching upon the table. "Hey, Bible thumper," Caleb sneered, tossing a stray shard of pizza crust towards Eli. Still obsessed with that ancient tome. Eli's fists clenched at his sides. He was growing weary of Caleb's relentless needling. "Yeah, so?" Anya snapped back, her eyes flashing with indignation. "What's it to you, Caleb?" Caleb puffed out his chest, attempting to appear menacing. Just wondering what fairy tales he's swallowing these days. He shifted his gaze back to Eli. "Heard any good ones about articulate asses lately?" Eli ignored him, pointedly focusing on his sandwich. He felt heat rise in his face. Anya rose to her feet, her voice cutting through the air. "Leave him alone, Caleb. He's not bothering anyone." Caleb smirked derisively. "Or what, Anya? You gonna be his bodyguard?" "Maybe I will," she retorted, stepping closer to Caleb. Though smaller in stature, she stood her ground, her gaze unflinching. "What's it to you?" Caught off guard by her spirited defiance, Caleb hesitated. He glanced at his cronies, who were suppressing snickers. He didn't want to lose credibility in their eyes. "Whatever," he muttered, backing down slightly. "Just saying, he's wasting his time with that antiquated stuff." Anya remained defiant. "Maybe you're the one wasting your time, Caleb, obsessing over what other people are doing." Caleb scowled, spun around, and stalked away with his friends, muttering under his breath. Anya reclaimed her seat, her cheeks slightly flushed. "You all right, Eli?" Eli looked up at her, surprised and deeply grateful. "Yeah, thanks, Anya. I appreciate you sticking up for me." Though still somewhat flustered, her support had bolstered his spirits. "Don't let him get under your skin," she advised, picking at her lunch. "He only elevates himself by diminishing others." "I know," Eli admitted, but the rationalization offered little comfort. He still felt vulnerable, like an oddity forever trapped within the pages of a long-forgotten book. "So," Anya said, seamlessly changing the subject, "what's the story about anyway? The one you and your grandpa are always discussing." Eli hesitated, suddenly acutely aware of being different. It's a story about a guy named Joseph. And his brothers. And dreams." Anya arched a curious eyebrow. "Dreams, who? Like, precognitive dreams?" Eli shrugged. "Sort of. He dreamed about things that actually happened. Then he was sold into slavery, and then he rose to become a powerful leader in Egypt." Anya leaned back in her chair, absorbing the details. "Sounds intriguing. Maybe you can tell me the whole thing sometime." Eli felt a strange excitement stir within him. Slavery and a burning bush. After Joseph's passing, Grandpa Samuel began, a shadow falling across his voice. The new Pharaoh held no memory of Joseph's service to Egypt. Observing the Israelites, the descendants of Joseph, flourishing in number and strength, apprehension gripped him. He feared they might align against Egypt during conflict. Eli, previously preoccupied with a frayed edge on the time-worn armchair, paused, his eyes widening with curiosity. "So, he enslaved them?" Indeed, Grandpa Samuel affirmed, a profound sorrow etched into the lines of his face. He subjected them to grueling labor, forcing them to construct cities and toil in the fields under the relentless sun. Their treatment was merciless, filled with beatings and unbearable privation. Eli scowled, his earlier animation subsiding. That's just awful. Why would God permit such a thing? Grandpa Samuel exhaled slowly. That's a question humanity has wrestled with for generations, Eli. God's design often eludes our understanding. Yet, even amidst the darkest despair, hope flickers. He pressed on. In their anguish, the Israelites' cries for deliverance reached God. And he heard their pleas. Now, Pharaoh, his worries regarding the burgeoning Israelite community still festering, decreed that every newborn Israelite boy be cast into the Nile. Eli's breath hitched. That's monstrous. Little babies? The sheer cruelty was unimaginable. He pictured his younger sister, Lily, and a chill snaked down his spine. Yes, Grandpa Samuel confirmed solemnly. But one Israelite woman, Jochebed, refused to condemn her infant to such a fate. She concealed him for 3 precious months. When concealment became impossible, she wove a papyrus basket, sealing it with pitch, and gently placed her child within. She then set the tiny vessel adrift on the Nile, close to where Pharaoh's daughter was accustomed to bathe. Eli leaned forward, utterly spellbound. What happened then? Pharaoh's daughter discovered the babe, Grandpa Samuel narrated, his tone gentling. Compassion stirred within her, despite knowing his Israelite origins. She named him Moses, meaning drawn forth, a testament to his rescue from the river's embrace. So, he was nurtured within Pharaoh's palace. Eli queried, astonishment coloring his voice. He was, Grandpa Samuel verified. He was reared as an Egyptian prince, immersed in their knowledge and customs. However, he never relinquished his true heritage, the memory of his Israelite ancestry. Years drifted by. Moses matured into a man of strength and contemplation. One fateful day, he witnessed an Egyptian overseer brutally assaulting an Israelite laborer. Consumed by righteous fury, Moses struck down the Egyptian, concealing the body in the sands. Eli's eyes grew large. He killed him. Grandpa Samuel nodded. Yes. When word reached Pharaoh's ears, he sought Moses' life. Thus, Moses sought refuge in the land of Midian, embracing the life of a shepherd. Eli processed this revelation, his thoughts swirling. A prince turned herdsman, evading the Pharaoh he once knew. It was the stuff of legends. One day, Grandpa Samuel continued, anticipation lacing his voice. Moses was tending his flock near Mount Horeb, the sacred mountain of God. He beheld an extraordinary sight, a bush ablaze, yet remaining unconsumed. Eli straightened up, his eyes gleaming with exhilaration. A burning bush? Really? Indeed, Grandpa Samuel responded, a spark of amusement in his eyes. Curiosity piqued, Moses approached to examine this bizarre phenomenon. As he drew nearer, God's voice echoed from within the fiery heart, Moses, Moses. Eli held his breath. He could almost envision it, the licking flames, the air alive with energy, the resonant voice emanating from the core of the fire. Do not approach any closer, God commanded. Remove your sandals, for the ground beneath your feet is holy. Then God declared, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Grandpa Samuel paused, allowing the gravity of these words to permeate the air. Moses was overcome with terror. He shielded his face, afraid to gaze upon God. And then, what did God say? Eli breathed, his voice barely audible. God proclaimed, I have borne witness to the affliction of my people in Egypt. Their cries against their oppressors have reached my ears, and I am deeply moved by their suffering. Therefore, I have descended to deliver them from the clutches of the Egyptians and to lead them from that land into a flourishing and spacious realm, a land abundant with sustenance and promise. Eli's heart throbbed. Incredible! God elaborated, the anguished cries of the Israelites have now reached me, and I have observed the extent of their oppression at the hands of the Egyptians. Therefore, go forth. I am dispatching you to Pharaoh to liberate my people, the Israelites, from Egypt. Grandpa Samuel reclined in his chair, a contented smile gracing his lips. God selected Moses, a man who had once known the privileges of a prince, then the life of a fugitive, to spearhead his people's exodus from bondage. He charged him with the task of confronting the mightiest ruler on earth and demanding the liberation of an entire nation. Eli could barely contain his excitement. This is unbelievable. So, Moses is going to guide them to freedom? He's going to challenge Pharaoh? How can he possibly manage that? Grandpa Samuel chuckled softly. Moses, understandably, felt apprehensive. He questioned God, "Who am I, that I should confront Pharaoh and lead the Israelites out of Egypt?" "Yeah, I'd be petrified too," Eli exclaimed. God reassured him, "I shall be with you. And this will serve as your sign that I have indeed sent you. Once you have led the people from Egypt, you shall worship God upon this very mountain." So, God furnished him with a sign. Eli questioned, his brow furrowed in thought. Like confirmation that it was truly God addressing him. More than one, Grandpa Samuel stated. Moses remained doubtful of his abilities. He voiced his concern, "What if they refuse to believe me or heed my words, declaring, 'The Lord has not appeared to you'?" Valid point. Eli interjected. So, God inquired of Moses, "What do you hold in your hand?" Moses replied, "A staff." God instructed, "Cast it upon the ground." Moses obeyed, and it transformed into a serpent, causing Moses to recoil in terror. Eli's eyes widened once more. A snake? How cool is that? Grandpa Samuel chuckled at Eli's youthful enthusiasm. Then God commanded Moses, "Reach forth your hand and seize it by the tail." So Moses extended his hand and grasped the serpent, and it reverted to a staff within his grasp. Unbelievable! Eli gasped, utterly mesmerized. He transformed a stick into a serpent and back again. That's like sorcery. Some might perceive it as such, Grandpa Samuel said, a playful glint in his eyes. Yet, it was a demonstration of God's divine power, a sign to persuade Moses and the Israelites of God's unwavering presence. What else? Eli urged, craving more details. God imparted another sign, Grandpa Samuel related. He instructed Moses to conceal his hand within his cloak. Upon withdrawing it, his hand was afflicted with leprosy, covered in ghastly white scales. Then God directed him to return his hand within his cloak, and upon its removal, it was restored, completely cleansed. Eli shivered involuntarily, picturing the gruesome sight of the leprous hand, followed by the miraculous healing. It was almost too much to comprehend. God declared, if they dismiss the first sign, they may heed the second. But if they continue to disbelieve, take water from the Nile and pour it onto the parched earth. The water drawn from the river will transmute into blood upon the ground. Eli was rendered speechless. Transforming the Nile into blood? That was simply astounding. So, Moses possessed these signs, Grandpa Samuel concluded, tangible proof of God's omnipotence and a promise of his unwavering presence. Yet, he still faltered. He pleaded, "Pardon your servant, Lord. I have never possessed eloquence, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to me. My speech and tongue are halting and clumsy." Eli frowned. He still didn't want to proceed. He was gripped by fear. "Eli," Grandpa Samuel said gently. "It's no small feat to confront a formidable king and demand the liberation of an entire people." But God offered reassurance once more. Who endowed humankind with the gift of speech? Who renders them deaf or mute? Who grants them sight or inflicts blindness? Is it not I, the Lord? Now proceed, I shall aid your speech and instruct you in what to utter. Eli pondered this. Despite wielding such signs, and possessing God's solemn promise, Moses was still consumed by trepidation. It rendered him more relatable, more akin to someone Eli could comprehend. Ultimately, Grandpa Samuel said, Moses acquiesced to God's command. However, he implored God to dispatch another to assist him. So God, in his infinite wisdom, delegated Aaron, Moses' brother, to serve as his spokesman. Aaron was renowned for his gift of gab, and he would address the people on. "Let my people go." So there he was, Grandpa Samuel began, his voice dropping to a resonant baritone. Moses, a shepherd who'd once walked the halls of power, confronting the most formidable ruler on earth. Imagine the sheer audacity. The unmitigated gall. Eli, sprawled on the rug, was all ears. Anya, perched stiffly on the armchair, arms crossed defensively, seemed immune to the drama, but Eli noticed her phone remained untouched. A minor victory, at least. Pharaoh, Samuel continued, a mischievous glint in his eyes, a king draped in finery, encircled by guards bristling with spears, by priests chanting ancient incantations, by advisors whispering insidious counsel. And there stood Moses, cloaked in homespun humility, his brother Aaron at his side, delivering the earth-shattering ultimatum. "The Lord, the God of Israel, commands, let my people go." The scene unfolded in Eli's mind's eye like a vivid tapestry. The stifling air of the palace, thick with the cloying perfume of myrrh, the flash of sunlight on burnished metal. He could almost taste the tension. And Pharaoh's response? Samuel chuckled, a dry, knowing sound. Predictably, Pharaoh was less than thrilled. "Who is this Lord," he sneered, "that I should heed his voice and release Israel? I know him not, and I will not release Israel." In essence, he told Moses to take a hike. Anya emitted a short, humorless puff of air. Shocking. But Moses, undeterred, persisted, Samuel said, brushing aside Anya's cynicism. He and Aaron offered proof of God's power, a staff transformed into a serpent, a hand afflicted with leprosy then miraculously restored. Yet Pharaoh's heart remained a fortress. Reason could not penetrate it. A fortress? Eli probed. Like, actually made of stone. Figuratively, Eli, Anya sighed, rolling her eyes skyward. It signifies an obdurate will, an impenetrable resolve. Samuel concurred. Precisely. An unyielding refusal. So, God, working through Moses, began a demonstration of divine force. He paused, inhaling deeply. The plagues descended. Eli sat up straighter, anticipation sparking within him. First, Samuel intoned, his voice gaining a theatrical gravity, the Nile became a river of blood. The very lifeline of Egypt, transformed into a torrent of death and corruption. Fish perished, the water became a putrid stew, and the Egyptians thirsted. He shuddered, momentarily lost in the tale. Imagine the horror. Their source of life turned against them. Anya remained skeptical. There are scientific explanations for that. Red tide, perhaps. A natural occurrence. Perhaps, Samuel allowed. But the narrative stresses the timing, its perfect correlation with Moses' command, a direct consequence of Pharaoh's insubordination. He pressed on, then came the frogs. An inundation of frogs, blanketing the land, invading their dwellings, infesting their food, a living carpet of amphibian flesh. Imagine the incessant chorus of croaking, the slick, repulsive feel of them underfoot. Eli made a face. Frogs were his nemesis. Next, a plague of gnats, Samuel declared, followed by flies. Ravenous swarms of biting insects, tormenting man and beast alike. Then came pestilence, decimating their livestock, cattle, sheep, goats, all succumbed. After that, festering boils erupted upon the skin of people and animals, inflicting agonizing torment. He paused, allowing the gruesome images to settle. Hailstones rained down, pulverizing crops and shattering roofs. Locusts swarmed, devouring what little remained. A tangible darkness, suffocating and absolute, enveloped the land for 3 long days. Eli shivered involuntarily. The mental landscape was desolate. That's intense. And yet, Samuel said, a hint of frustration creeping into his tone, Pharaoh still refused to yield. Each time, after each devastating plague, he pledged to release the Israelites, only to retract his promise the moment the affliction subsided, his heart ossifying anew. But why not just let them go? Eli asked, bewildered by the Pharaoh's obstinacy. It seems simpler. Pride, Eli, Samuel explained. Unbending arrogance. Pharaoh considered himself a deity. He could not stomach the idea that another god, the god of these slaves, possessed greater power than he. So, what was the final plague? Eli pressed, eager for the climax. Samuel's face clouded over, taking on a grave expression. The most cataclysmic of them all. The death of the firstborn. He paused dramatically, letting the weight of the words fill the room. God dispatched an angel of death to sweep through Egypt, taking the life of the firstborn son in every household, from the royal heir to the son of the most abject servant. Only those who heeded God's warning and marked their doorframes with lamb's blood were spared. Eli remained speechless, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the tragedy. It seemed cruel, unjust. Anya, however, was focused intently on Samuel. That's quite a narrative. It is, Samuel agreed. A story steeped in suffering, but also one that underscores God's immense power and unwavering devotion to his chosen people. I mean, Anya elaborated, carefully choosing her words, setting aside the supernatural elements. The Exodus narrative carries profound significance. Think about it. It's a bedrock myth for an entire civilization. It forged their identity, shaped their laws, and solidified their belief system. She paused, pushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. Even if it didn't unfold precisely as depicted, its underlying message, its indelible imprint, that is undeniable. Samuel smiled warmly. Precisely, Anya. The story, regardless of its factual accuracy, has endured across the ages. It's a tale of liberation, of triumph over oppression, of the arduous pursuit of freedom. It's an enduring narrative, continuing to resonate with people today. Eli, still wrestling with the horrifying image of the slain firstborn, glanced from Anya to his grandfather, beginning to grasp the broader implications. It wasn't merely about historical accuracy. It was about the story's deeper meaning, its lasting power, the very idea of overcoming insurmountable odds. So, Pharaoh finally let them go then? Eli inquired. Samuel nodded. Yes, finally, irrevocably. The death of his own firstborn son shattered Pharaoh's resolve. He summoned Moses and Aaron, and with a voice wrung raw with grief, commanded them to take their people and depart from Egypt without delay. And so, Samuel concluded, a note of triumph resonating in his voice, the Israelites, after centuries of bondage, commenced their long-awaited journey towards liberation. The Red Sea miracle. Picture this, Eli, Grandpa Samuel murmured, his voice a hushed confidence. Imagine scores upon scores, not merely families, but their beasts of burden, their meager possessions stacked precariously on wagons, all stealing away under the cloak of night. He edged closer, lamplight dancing in his eyes. They were fleeing for dear life, Eli. Escaping centuries shackled to servitude, venturing towards the great unknown. From her perch on the sofa's armrest, Anya arched a brow. Unknown is putting it mildly. A parched wilderness. Scant sustenance, practically non-existent water. A grim outlook, even absent a pursuing army. They possessed belief, Samuel countered, his tone resolute yet gentle. Belief in Moses, trust in the God who promised deliverance. Enthralled, Eli was already lost within the scene Samuel conjured. He could almost discern the groan of axles, the lamb's anxious calls, the susurrus of voices, a blend of anticipation and trepidation. He envisioned dust devils rising in the arid air, the stifling heat bearing down, the constant shadow of discovery looming. Pharaoh, predictably, experienced instant regret, Samuel went on. He rued his decision almost immediately. The plagues had devastated his domain, his coffers lay bare, and his anger knew no bounds. He marshaled his chariots, his legionnaires, the most formidable fighting force of that era, and gave chase. Anya shifted, a pensive expression clouding her face. Logistically fascinating. The time frame involved in mobilizing such a contingent? And how did they pinpoint such a sizable exodus across that desolate terrain? Samuel chuckled softly. Intricacies, Anya, intricacies. Sometimes the heart of the tale outweighs the practicalities. He winked at Eli. Besides, this is where it truly ignites. Eli leaned in further, his eagerness plain. The Israelites reached the shore of the Red Sea, Samuel recounted, his voice swelling with theatrical flair. At their backs, Pharaoh's host was closing in, the swirling dust they churned up a harrowing foreboding. They were ensnared. Panic blossomed. They turned against Moses, berating him for leading them to their doom. Eli could virtually taste the despair of the Israelites, the crushing weight of their predicament. He visualized them, huddled on the beach, their faces masks of terror. He questioned whether he would have sustained the resolve to press onward, to maintain faith facing such impossible odds. Yet Samuel carried on, his voice regaining its strength. Moses remained unyielding. He raised his staff, as divinely instructed, and extended it over the water. Samuel paused for dramatic effect, inhaling deeply. And then the extraordinary unfolded. A mighty eastern gale began to howl, a tempest so fierce it felt as though it would rend the heavens. It roared throughout the night, and as it did, the sea commenced to part. The waters surged upward on either flank, forming aqueous citadels, looming overhead, iridescent in the moonlight. Eli gasped, his imagination unfettered. He envisioned the majestic walls of water, crystalline and shimmering, refracting the moon's pale glow. He could sense the wind's fury, whipping at his hair, the salty spray kissing his skin. Even Anya seemed captivated, her habitual skepticism momentarily subdued. The mental picture is breathtaking, she conceded quietly. The sheer scale of it. The Israelites, Samuel continued, his voice reverent, traversed the seabed on solid ground. The wind had scoured the seafloor dry, unveiling a path of sand and seashells where moments before only water had rained. They walked all through that night, a seemingly unending stream, sandwiched between those soaring watery ramparts. Eli imagined the unsettling quiet, punctuated only by the cadence of their footfalls, the protesting creaks of carts, and the muted din of the wind. He pondered the fear and wonder they must have experienced, encircled by such a display of godly power. As dawn approached, Samuel said, his voice intensifying, the final stragglers of the Israelites reached the opposite bank. Pharaoh's warriors, witnessing this spectacle, charged into the gap after them, desperate to reclaim their escaped chattel. Eli's pulse quickened. He could see the chariots hurtling across the exposed floor, the horses at full stretch, the soldiers bellowing. He knew what awaited. But as soon as the entire army was mired in the sea's heart, Samuel declared, his voice ringing with righteous retribution, God commanded Moses to extend his staff once more. And at his gesture, the watery bulwarks crashed inward, swallowing chariots, horses, legionnaires. Not one survived. Eli closed his eyes, picturing the pandemonium, the scream swallowed by the roar, the sea's absolute dominance. He felt a fleeting pang of sympathy for the hapless soldiers, yet also a surge of exultation for the Israelites and their newfound liberty. The Israelites watched from the land as the remains of their former oppressors washed ashore. Samuel finished, his voice fading to a whisper. They had witnessed a miracle, a palpable demonstration of God's might and his unwavering dedication to his chosen people. They sang and danced and praised God for their salvation. He gazed at Eli, his eyes brimming with emotion. That, Eli, is the saga of the Red Sea. A tale of faith, of mettle, and of divine power. Eli was rendered speechless, his mind still swimming with the vibrant images Samuel had painted. He glanced at Anya, anticipating her dismissal of the narrative as mere fable, but she remained silent, her gaze fixed upon the lamp's dancing light. At last, she spoke, her tone subdued and thoughtful. Regardless of its precise accuracy, it remains a potent story. A chronicle of liberation, of the triumph over persecution, of the victory of hope over despair. One can understand why it has endured through time. Samuel smiled warmly. Precisely, Anya. Precisely. And that, in and of itself, is a sort of miracle, wouldn't you agree? The capacity of narrative to inspire and to persevere. Eli, still grappling to reconcile the miraculous events with his existing understanding of the world, inquired, "But Grandpa, do you genuinely believe it transpired in that manner? Did the sea actually split apart?" Samuel met his gaze, his eyes twinkling mischievously. "What I embrace, Eli, is that on occasion, when individuals are facing insurmountable obstacles, when they possess faith and courage, exceptional events can unfold. Whether you label it a miracle or something else, the core truth is that the Israelites obtained their liberation. And that is a story deserving of recollection." He paused, then added with a playful grin, "Besides, wouldn't it make for rather a dull tale if it were simply about a collection of individuals meandering across the desert?" Eli chuckled, the tension in the room receding. He acknowledged he harbored lingering questions, lingering uncertainties. But he also perceived he was gaining a deeper awareness of faith, of the essence of storytelling, and of the enduring allure of hope. And he knew, with a rising tide of anticipation, that his exploration was just beginning. The 10 Commandments. "Picture this," Grandpa Samuel began, his eyes alight with storytelling magic. "Moses, fresh from parting the Red Sea, ascends Mount Sinai. The heavens erupted, a symphony of thunder and lightning, a truly spectacular divine spectacle. Up there, at the peak, he receives the 10 Commandments from God himself, carved into stone." Eli, leaning forward, was completely engrossed. He conjured the scene in his mind: Moses, a solitary figure etched against the tempestuous sky, accepting the very tenets that would define his people. "Wow," he whispered, "so that's the origin of the code." "More than just a collection of rules, Eli," Samuel gently clarified. "A covenant, a sacred pact between God and his chosen. A guidepost towards ethical living." He enumerated them on his fingers. "Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not craft graven images. Thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain." Pretty fundamental, wouldn't you say? Anya, momentarily distracted from her sketching, glanced up. "So, golden calf construction is a definite no-no then?" A playful lilt colored her question. Samuel chuckled. "Precisely. And nix the thievery, the fibbing, plus, honor thy parents, basically, the bedrock of a functional society." Eli's imagination was still clinging to the mountaintop vision. But what became of the Israelites while Moses was absent? Were they simply waiting it out? Grandpa Samuel sighed, a shadow momentarily darkening his features. "Ah, that's where our tale takes a somber turn. During Moses' sojourn on the mountain, acquiring the commandments, the Israelites grew agitated. Doubt crept in. They yearned for the perceived security of Egypt, even in chains. They fashioned that golden calf, the one Anya mentioned, and began to worship it. A stark betrayal of their recent liberation." He paused, allowing the gravity of their offense to resonate. Upon his descent, Moses was, let's just say, displeased. He shattered the tablets in his fury. Eli's breath hitched. "He broke them?" "But those were the 10 Commandments." "Indeed," Samuel confirmed. A potent symbol of the broken agreement. But God, in his infinite grace, offered Moses a second chance. He inscribed another set of tablets, and this time, the Israelites, humbled by their folly, were prepared to heed the divine word. So, they finally had the guidelines, Eli said, his brow furrowed in thought. What happened next? Then commenced the arduous trek to the promised land, Samuel stated, a wistful quality entering his voice. 40 years of hardship in the wilderness. 40 years of trials, learning to place their trust in God's providence. They confronted starvation, dehydration, skirmishes with adversaries. It was far from a cakewalk. Anya tapped her pencil against her sketchbook, a rhythmic counterpoint to the narrative. 40 years? That seems excessive. Surely they could have reached their destination sooner. It transcended mere distance, Samuel elucidated. It was about reshaping their inner landscape. They needed to cultivate reliance on God, to have faith in His guidance, even amidst adversity. They had to cast off their enslavement mentality and evolve into a nation worthy of its inheritance. Eli mulled it over. 40 years of wandering, facing relentless tribulation. It sounded draining, but perhaps transformative, too. He pictured a life steeped in constant uncertainty, dependent solely on unwavering faith. Just then, Caleb moseyed into the room, wearing an uncharacteristically subdued expression. He shied away from eye contact with Eli and Anya, nervously twisting the edge of his t-shirt. "Hey, Caleb," Eli greeted, surprised. "What's going on?" Caleb mumbled something barely audible. "What was that, son?" Samuel gently prompted. Caleb drew a steadying breath. I wanted to apologize," he confessed, his voice hushed. For acting like a jerk. About the stories. And well, everything." Eli and Anya exchanged stunned glances. This was a far cry from the usual Caleb. "It's all right, Caleb," Eli replied, feeling a wave of relief. He'd felt stung by Caleb's scorn, but he missed their bond, too. "Yeah, we all spout nonsense occasionally," Anya chimed in, offering Caleb a tentative smile. Caleb looked up, his eyes tinged with red. I think I was trying to appear tough. But these tales, they're quite fascinating. And I was just being, I can't put my finger on it, envious, maybe? That you guys were so captivated." Samuel rested a comforting hand on Caleb's shoulder. "It requires bravery to admit when you're in the wrong, son. I'm proud of you." Caleb managed a fleeting, weak smile. "So, can I, join you guys while you're digging into all this stuff?" "Of course, you can," Eli exclaimed, grinning broadly. "The more, the merrier." Anya nodded in agreement. "Yeah, we could use another point of view. Especially a dissenting one." Caleb grinned back, the genuine smile utterly transforming his demeanor. "All right then. So, what comes next? Do they eventually arrive at this promised land place?" Samuel chuckled warmly. "Patience, Caleb. The path to the promised land is a protracted one. And fraught with obstacles. But also brimming with aspiration. And that's a story for another day." He winked, then addressed Eli. "What are your reflections on those commandments, Eli? Do you believe it's achievable to abide by them?" Eli pondered the inquiry. "I think it's incredibly challenging," he responded. "I mean, it's difficult to consistently be virtuous and to invariably make the ethical decision. But I believe it's a worthwhile endeavor. Because if everyone strove, perhaps the planet would be a more harmonious place." "Precisely," Grandpa Samuel said, his eyes shining with approval. "It's not about flawlessness, Eli, it's about aspiration. About aiming for something beyond ourselves. And even when we stumble, about picking ourselves up and resuming the journey." Like the Israelites meandering in the desert, Anya added, they erred, but they persisted. Eli nodded, feeling a resurgence of commitment. This journey through the Bible was unfolding as more than mere historical enlightenment. It was a provocation, an invitation to scrutinize his own convictions and principles. And, just perhaps, it was a route towards discovering his own sense of faith. A land of promise. 40 years, Grandpa Samuel's voice had dropped, acquiring a timbre of hushed reverence. Imagine the relentless hardship, the gnawing doubts, the decades spent wandering. Then, finally, the Israelites stood poised on the threshold of the promised land. Moses, nearing his sunset, entrusted leadership to Joshua. He would be their guide across the Jordan. Eli, engrossed, leaned closer. He pictured it vividly, a river, engorged by the spring thaw, the people, weary yet alight with anticipation, massed on its banks. How did they manage to cross that? He asked, anticipating a tale of extraordinary daring. Grandpa Samuel's smile widened. As the Red Sea had yielded to Moses, so the Jordan parted for Joshua. The priests, bearing the ark, waded into the torrent, and the river halted, its waters surging upstream in a monumental swell. The people traversed the dry bed. Anya, observing in her usual quiet manner, arched a skeptical brow. Convenient, wouldn't you say? Indeed, Grandpa Samuel chuckled. Divine intervention, a God-wrought miracle, some might claim. Others might interpret it as a testament to the Israelites' unshakable faith, their burning conviction that this land was theirs by right. The boy considered both angles. He was drawn to the image of the waters cleaving, a dazzling demonstration of celestial favor. But he also understood Anya's reservations. It was, after all, a story, a narrative shift and change in the telling. Joshua then ushered them into Canaan, Grandpa Samuel continued. There, they faced countless battles. The land teemed with rival tribes, and claiming their inheritance meant relentless struggle. Jericho became their first formidable obstacle. He then painted a vivid scene, the siege of Jericho, the ritualistic march around the ramparts for 6 days, the blare of trumpets, and then, on the 7th, the earth-shattering roar as the walls disintegrated after the Israelites unleashed a unified cry. Again, quite the spectacle, Anya remarked, her tone edged with dry amusement. Quite so, Grandpa Samuel agreed. And, once more, ripe for interpretation. Some see it as a literal display of omnipotence, others, a symbol of the Israelites' unwavering determination, their collective will crushing any resistance. The walls, of course, could represent any barrier, any daunting trial that crumbles before belief and endurance. Eli visualized Jericho's fortifications collapsing, not just brick and stone, but the anxieties and uncertainties that often confined him. He wrestled with his own shortcomings, his own moments of doubt, and the possibility that faith, whatever form it took, could offer him a path through them. The Israelites subdued swathes of Canaan, Grandpa Samuel said, his cadence settling into a more even rhythm. They parceled out the land among the 12 tribes, and began forging lives in their newfound home. Yet the saga doesn't conclude there. It's a tapestry of triumphs and tragedies, fidelity and betrayal, blessings and curses. He detailed the trials awaiting them in the Promised Land, the persistent allure of pagan gods, the internecine conflicts among the tribes, the pattern of transgression, repentance, and redemption that punctuated their history. Even in the Promised Land, they floundered, Eli noted, his youthful idealism tempered by a touch of realism. It wasn't a picture-perfect paradise. Hardly, Grandpa Samuel affirmed. The Promised Land wasn't an idyllic escape. It demanded persistent effort, constant choices between righteousness and wickedness, and a perpetual testing of their devotion. A knowing glimmer entered his eyes as he looked at Eli. Like life itself. Twilight had begun to drape the room in shadows. The air carried the scent of parched earth and sun-baked grasses, a lingering reminder of the summer heat. Eli felt a sense of closure, like the final page of a long and intricate chapter. He reached out and reverently closed the Bible. He felt a complex interplay of emotions, wonder, bewilderment, inspiration, and skepticism. Above all, however, he gained a deeper respect for the resonance of these ancient tales, their ability to transcend generations, to influence societies, and to ignite both faith and doubt. So, he ventured, turning to Anya, "What are your thoughts?" Anya leaned back, her face pensive. "I still have a multitude of questions," she conceded. "And I still struggle to accept some of it literally." "But?" Eli pressed, sensing more to come. "But," Anya continued, "I must admit, I have a newfound appreciation for these narratives. Not strictly as historical accounts, but as foundational stories that have shaped Western civilization for centuries. They've permeated art, literature, music, jurisprudence, and even our moral compass. You can't deny their impact." She paused, meeting the gazes of Eli and Grandpa Samuel. "I still don't know if I believe in God, or any of this, truthfully. But I recognize the significance of these stories. They represent our cultural heritage, our history, and, in some ways, who we are." Eli grinned. He wasn't expecting a sudden conversion. However, her willingness to engage with the stories, to grapple with their meaning, represented a substantial breakthrough. "I think," Eli reflected slowly, "that the Exodus, the Israelites' journey from servitude to liberation, embodies hope. It whispers of the possibility of transformation, even against insurmountable odds. It champions the courage to advocate for your convictions, regardless of the opposition. He reflected on his own aspirations, his own internal battles, his yearning for direction and significance. He recognized that the Exodus narrative, like all biblical accounts, could be a wellspring of motivation, a reminder that even in the bleakest moments, hope remains a tangible force. Grandpa Samuel beamed, his wrinkles deepening around his eyes. Beautifully put, Eli. Beautifully put. He stood up, stretching languidly. Now, how about some supper? I believe we've earned it. As they ambled toward the house, Eli cast a final glance at the Bible resting on the table. It was simply a book, bound in leather and filled with printed words. But it was infinitely more. It was a collection of tales with the power to reshape lives, to spark hope, and to challenge our worldview. It represented an odyssey, not just across ancient landscapes and through distant eras, but through the intricate depths of the human psyche. And Eli, along with Anya, was only at the beginning of that journey.